Call the January 4th, 2023 at-large authority meeting of the Hawaii Community Development Authority. The time is now 10:14. In accordance, so go ahead. Okay, sorry.
Okay, don't worry. Thank you, Chair. In accordance with section 92-3.7 Hawaii Revised Statutes, the Hawaii Community Development Authority is holding today's at-large board meeting virtually on Zoom. The Zoom link details were included on the meeting agenda. Therefore, members of the public are welcome to join us on Zoom and also at our physical meeting site at the American Brewery Building, 547 Queen Street, second floor boardroom, Honolulu, Hawaii 96813. The meeting is being live streamed on HCDA's YouTube feed. The HCDA communication staff is hosting this meeting. Once this meeting begins, everyone will be muted for clear audio. Board members, if you have any comments or questions, please unmute yourselves to speak. This is a public virtual meeting, so to prevent any distractions, if you are not a board member, staff member, or HCDA's Attorney General, please turn off your video during the meeting. If you are providing public testimony, your name will be called accordingly. Please turn your video on, clearly state your name and affiliation, and proceed with your testimony. When you are finished, please turn off your video. In accordance with section 92-3.7C Hawaii Revised Statutes, if the authority's ICT connection for the remote meeting is lost, the meeting will be recessed until the connection is restored. If the connection cannot be restored within 30 minutes, the meeting will be terminated and the authority will continue the meeting at another notice date. Thank you.
Let the record reflect the following members are present. Vice Chair Apo.
Here.
Member Higa.
Here.
Member Miranda Johnson.
Here.
Member Salaveria. Excused. Member Hirai.
Here.
Member McLean. Excused. Member Wicker.
Present.
Member Suji.
Here.
Member Hasha. Excused. Member Sakota.
Here.
Member Lewis. He's excused. Yeah.
Member Lou.
Member Lewis. Member Ray. Member Leong.
Here.
Member Light, excused. And for today's meeting, do we have quorum?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're short. We have 9. Oh yeah, 9. Sorry, yeah, sorry. Can't count. 9.
9.
Excuse
Okay,
me,
we
sir,
have
9.
quorum.
You have quorum.
Okay.
Counting you.
All right, board members will have an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments after an agenda item has been presented. Individuals from the public who have requested to provide verbal public testimony on a specific agenda item are on standby and will be permitted into the meeting respectively. Item number 1, regular meeting minutes of November 2nd, 2022. Board members, are there any comments or corrections to the minutes? Any comments or corrections? If there are no comments or questions, the minutes are approved as presented. Item number 2, tab number 2, presentation of the audited financial statement for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2022. Mr. Garrett Sasaki, Administrative Service Officer, will now present the HCDA staff report. Garrett?
Thank you, Chair. The staff report is included under tab 2 in your packet. This is for audit of the fiscal year ended June 30, 2022. It was completed in December on the 14th. On the meeting, we have our auditors, KPDLY, that would do a short presentation. And we have Guy Nishihira, who's the assurance principal.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Guy Nishihira, assurance principal. Here with Ralph Kanetoku, who is the engagement partner here at KKDLY. Thank you very much for your time. we're hopefully just make this presentation pretty short and sweet, but we just wanted to inform you as to the conduct of the audit. I'm going to share my screen. I'm not sure if everybody has the presentation, but I'll share my screen just in case. Is everybody able to see the presentation on screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear us as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. As Garrett and Guy mentioned, we're here to present the results of our audit of HCDA. So on our agenda for today, page 1, what we'd like, our discussion topics for today is to discuss the scope of our engagement and discuss the reports delivered, and more importantly, what we indicate in each of the reports that we delivered. Discuss with you certain matters related to the conduct of our audit as required by our professional standards, and discuss some current and prior year audit findings. So if we could go to the next page, the scope of the services. We were engaged by the Office of the Auditor to conduct the financial audit of the HCDA. This was as of and for the year ended June 30th, 2022. There were 3 reports that we delivered as a result of our audit. The first being the independent auditor's report on the financial statements. So in this report, we wanted to point out certain things. First, that the audit was conducted in accordance with all pertinent auditing standards. That would be auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America and government auditing standards. And we rendered an unmodified opinion on those financial statements. In other words, based upon the audit procedures that we applied on HCDA's financial statements, it's our opinion that HCDA's financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So it's a clean opinion on HCDA's financial statements. The second report we issued was the independent auditor's reports on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance. So our audit was performed in accordance with government auditing standards. Those standards require that we review internal controls over financial reporting as a basis for determining the extent of our audit procedures and ultimately rendering our opinion on the financial statements. In this independent auditor's report on internal control of financial reporting, we indicate that we found no material weaknesses in internal control over financial reporting. We did identify a finding related to capital assets. We'll discuss that shortly, but that was not considered a material weakness in internal controls. And we found no instances of non-compliance or other matters that would have a direct and material effect on HCDA's financial statements. The third report is the required communications letter. So our professional standards require that we communicate certain matters related to the conduct of our audit. So we'll cover the more significant items contained in this letter in today's brief presentation. Next item relates to certain matters related to our audit. First being the qualified aspects of accounting policies. Just wanted to emphasize that it is management's responsibility for the selection and use of accounting policies. The significant accounting policies of HCDA can be found in note 2 of your financial statements. We did want to bring to your attention that there was a change in accounting principles as it relates to leases of HCDA. So effective July 1st, 2021, so that would be for fiscal year 22, the HCDA adopted GASB statement number 87 pertaining to leases. So GASB 87 requires that that lease assets and lease liabilities be reported on your government-wide financial statements. The fundamental principle of GASB 87 is that leases represent financings of right-to-use assets. So what you'll see in this year's financial statements as of June 30, 2022, in the government-wide financial statements for leases as lessees, where HCDA is the lessee, there's a right to use assets that's recorded and lease liabilities. And for the leases where HCDA is the lessor, a lease receivable is recorded, as well as a deferred inflows of resources. Again, it's the change is reflected in the government-wide financial statements, and it's recording the lease assets and liabilities related to HCDA's leases. There were no other new accounting policies adopted during the current year, and the application of its existing policies were not changed. We've noted no transactions entered into by HCDA that lacked authoritative guidance, and we're pleased to report that all significant transactions were recorded in the proper period.
Okay. So continuing on page 5, we just want to communicate that we have no significant difficulties in dealing with management and performing and
Alexa, reading lamp off.
yeah, so we'd like to thank Garrett and his team at HCDA for giving us full access to any information that we requested in order to complete the audit. So there were no significant difficulties in dealing. We again thank HCDA for their patience. We understand that this was the transition year when this was the first year that we conducted the audit for HCDA. So again, we appreciate your time, understanding, and patience, and yeah, we thank you for everything, Garrett and your team, for making this a relatively smooth audit. No disagreements with management with respect to accounting, reporting on audit matters noted during the audit. As noted, as part of the financial statements, accounting estimates are always an integral part of financial statements, and HCDA's financial statements is no different. So the more significant accounting estimates affecting HCDA's financial statements include the valuation of accounts and loans receivables, the carrying value of capital assets, as well as the allocated share of the state's net OPIB and pension liability. So again, we evaluate the key factors and assumptions used by management to develop the estimates and determine that they were reasonable in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. As far as corrected and uncorrected misstatements, there were some corrected audit adjustments. The more significant ones were, again, to record the adjustments to HCDA's allocated share of the state net pension and OPIB liabilities. The other one was alluded to by Ralph earlier, HCDA adopting and implementing GASB number 87 related to leases. So again, this was a new policy, new change in accounting principles. As Ralph stated, there was a lease receivable and deferred inflow of resources of about 12.7 million reported on the government-wide financial statements. Also, a right to use lease asset and lease payable of about 818,000 for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2022. As far as the uncorrected misstatements, we noted just a couple. It dealt with just the capital assets. The first one was there was some construction in progress in fiscal year 2021 that were inadvertently recorded as expenditures in the prior year. So that was about 258,000. The other is there was a transfer of items from CIP to capital assets. and recorded depreciation expense, which should have been recorded in fiscal year 2021, which amounted to about $40,000 of related depreciation expense. So those are the two adjustments that were passed by HCDA's management as it relates to the audit. Going on to the next page, we did find one current year finding. It's similar to the finding that was presented for the fiscal year 2021, dealing with timely reconciliations of capital assets. Again, as was noted in the previous page, there was a couple of adjustments that were passed for fiscal year 2022. One of which there was some CIP that should have been recorded but was inadvertently recorded as expenditures or expenses in the prior year, which understated the net position for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021 by about $258,000. The second one was just the HCDA identified equipment that should have been placed in service in fiscal year 2021 that was still classified as CIP in 2022. The result of this is depreciation, accumulated depreciation was understated by about $40,000. So those two numbers weren't material to the financial statements taken as a whole, but we did want to communicate these to the board of HCDA. As far as following up on prior year findings, again, in the previous year, the predecessor auditor recommended to HCDA that they enhance some communication channels within the entity and between governmental agencies to help assist in preparing timely and accurate reconciliations of the capital assets. So we noted that HCDA did implement the processes and controls to significantly remediate this finding. However, in our test work, we noted that a similar finding was noted in the current year. So I know that HCDA has taken a bunch of steps to implement processes and controls to mitigate and to make sure that timely reconciliations of capital assets are done. But we just wanted to bring to your attention that there are a couple of items that we noted when we were testing capital assets that were similar to prior year findings noted in fiscal year 2021. As far as there was another finding in the previous year fiscal year 2021 regarding the record keeping and preparing accrual basis financial statements. We noted that HCDA did implement the process and controls to remediate this finding. And we noted during our test work that no similar finding was identified in fiscal year 2022. So this finding appears to be resolved in fiscal year 2022. That's it for the formal presentation of the audit for HCDA for fiscal year 2022. We're available for any questions that any board member or any staff member or management may have as it relates to the audit.
All right. Is there any questions or comments from members for KKDLOI audit report presentation? Is there any questions or comments from the board?
Can we direct the question to the executive director, or is it just for the accountants?
You can redirect it, member Higa.
Okay. Craig, I'd love on page 55, there's the breakdown of revenue bonds, 60 million authorized and 47 million unissued. Could you give guidance on how long these revenue bonds are able to be issued for, and then a sort of timetable on issuing for the next couple of years? And I know that this will probably bleed over into the next item for discussion.
Yeah, Garrett, I mean,
I think we'd have to address that separately. I can take down your question and get back to you. Revenue bonds, we need a source of repayment, so there's a whole process to figure out.
When was the last time you issued revenue bonds?
Decades ago.
Okay. Yeah, so
So I'd have to refresh my understanding of it also.
I think, member Higa, why don't we get back to you on that question?
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or any questions for KKDLI? Any public testimony? No. Okay. Well, for the record, member Ray has joined the meeting.
Okay, I'm gonna excuse
We
myself.
have quorum with member Ray now. Thank you, member Devine. Okay, thank you very much for the audit report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, presentation of the public facilities plan for 2023 to 2027. The public facilities plan is the list of projects with anticipated timing, the HCDA staff plans to execute in the next 5 years. Mr. Sasaki will now present.
Thank you, Chair. The staff reports under tab 3 in your packet. We are presenting this because the list of projects was one of the challenges identified in the strategic plan, and it is one of the Kaka'ako one-year goals to utilize some of our public facilities funds. So attached is a list of all of the projects. We will refine the list over time with the information presented and even the items in the list. So we're just open to any questions.
Yeah, and if I can add to Garrett's comments, I think maybe to member Sakota's comments in one of the meetings when we talked about Kolowalo Park improvements, I think there was a feeling that we should kind of take a look at improvements as a whole in big picture. What are we going to do, not just Kolowalo Park? So this public facilities plan, just for information, is intended to sort of list out sort of aspirationally what we want to achieve. As Garrett mentioned, I think the cost and estimates, and I think the method of financing for these projects has to yet be determined. But this is a list of what we're hoping to accomplish by way of public facilities improvements in our districts.
Members, are there any questions or comments on the staff report?
Member Hugo with one question. In looking at this public facilities plan, I noticed that there isn't a ton of infrastructure development. So is it the case that in the Kaka'ako district, there is not an additional need for infrastructure? I'm especially thinking about, TOD areas. Like, is there adequate infrastructure to support the anticipated construction in those TOD zones?
So so I think this is an initial stab at the public facilities plan. There is, one infrastructure improvement that we're looking at for Kaka'ako, for Central Kaka'ako. It's not reflected on this one just yet. I think we're gonna try to put that into the supplemental state budget for Ilani Y Street. I think that as we develop further, if there's some infrastructure requirements that are needed for TOD, we'll factor that into this public facilities plan.
Got it. Yeah, I just want to ensure that, HCDA is planning adequately for infrastructure, especially in those TOD areas of the district. So just want to note that.
Thank you, Member Ego.
Question.
Yes, Vice Chair. Oh,
Yeah, following up on Sterling's comment, would my concern is wayfinding. I don't know if street signage and wayfinding is considered part of infrastructure, but it's getting more and more difficult as the whole entire area, which includes Kapolei, Kalailo, and all of that interface occurs, to find your way around, or you can get lost, in there. So I just want to throw that out there as maybe some consideration as a part of facilities, and we might be able to take a look at that if that kind of funding is authorized. So just I don't need comments on it. Just wanted to throw that out there for the record.
Thank you, Member Paul.
Any other questions or comments? Any public testimony? All right, thank you. Thank you, Gary. Item number 4, proposed current legislative requests for the 2023 legislative session summarized below. A 99-year lease bill amends section 206E-14 HRS to authorize entering into a 99-year leases for non-crown lands. B, Saratoga Road Energy Corridor Project, request for capital improvement project CIP funds to construct electrical and communications infrastructure improvements for the Kailailoa Community Development District. C, Kewalo Basin Harbor Wharf improvements, requests for CIP funds to address a public safety issue by repairing a deeply deteriorated wharf at Kewalo Basin Harbor located in the Kaka'ako Community Development District. And D, AEA Infrastructure Development, request of CIP funds to construct an access road to AEA stream for maintenance and clearing. Chairperson Nakamoto, Craig Nakamoto, Executive Director, will now present the HCDA staff report.
Thank you, Chair. So members, just if you can allow me, I'll kind of summarize further what these current legislative requests are for. The 99-year lease bill was kind of is in the governor's legislative package currently. The idea for it came from a bill that Senator Chang had introduced last session to amend 206E-14 to allow the HCDA to enter into 99-year leases. That bill made it through subject matter committee. I testified in strong support of it with the notion that we could use, if we had the ability to enter into 99-year leases, we could enter into a ground lease for 99 years for affordable rental housing project or some kind of leasehold for sale project. The bill ran into some opposition at the subject matter committee level in the Senate, notably by some Native Hawaiian groups on how it would affect ceded land. So we did work out an exception or carve out that the 99-year lease language authority would not apply to ceded lands. The bill was not heard by Ways and Means and it subsequently died. I look at, so we have kind of resurrected this bill in a slightly different form, but taking off of Senator Chang's bill with the idea that this is going, if passed, this will be another tool that we can use to produce more, proactively produce more affordable housing in the district, which is a kind of a board policy direction that we have taken heart into. For example, if we can purchase Block P, we could use, could implement a 99-year ground lease to see if a leasehold for sale product might work, or enter into a ground lease for a 99-year rental housing project. So it's another tool that we can use as part of our affordable housing proactive strategy. Francine and I met with the housing chairs on the Senate and House side, and both have expressed, strong support for this bill, although with some guarded comments about, whether or not it would make it through. But, Francine and I are committed to pushing this, doing our best to push it through and get it passed. Any questions on that one? And we'll keep you up to date as things progress. The Saratoga Road Energy Corridor Project is a carryover from last year. As you might recall, it went in for CIP funding. The method of financing got changed to ARPA money. The governor approved it in the budget, state budget was approved, but the governor vetoed the ARPA, this item. We applied to BNF to get it reinstated, but it was not reinstated by Budget and Finance. So we're going in again for 12.125 million in CIP funds. This is an important project for Kalaeloa. I would note that this is in the sort of the A budget that's going in now. In the supplemental budget, and this is all subject to approval by DBED director and BNF, but we are also going to go in for additional money, hopefully to match some federal money that we hope to obtain through the efforts of the CODEL, specifically Senator Hirono in the National Defense Authorization Act. A reliable electrical system is critical to development in Kalaeloa. So this project and actually the whole, sort of electrification of Kalaeloa with cable and reliable electricity is a significant goal for the agency. Any questions or comments on that one? The next one is the Kewalo Basin Harbor Wharf Improvements Project. So this request for 25 million, last year it made it into the state budget, but was taken out of the state budget. This item is not in the current transitional budget, but we're hoping to put it in the supplemental budget. This continues to be an important public safety repair for the wharf, the Kewalo Basin Fisherman's Wharf area, and we're hoping this time that we're going to get it through and get it funded. And the cost of this is 25 million. I think the longer we defer this, the more that cost the cost is going to increase. In the meantime, Lindsay Asset Management, we have procured a fencing contractor to fence off the affected wharf area and limit pedestrian access to it, just to address some of the liability issues and to prevent more pedestrian access onto those affected parts of the pier. And this is because OHA, which has the land on the land side, is currently programming more activities on their part of the wharf, which is going to attract more people and customers to that area. So we want to make sure that the wharf area is cordoned off. Any comments or questions on that? The last one is for the Heia Community Development District. When I visited with the chair, former chair and member Apo to Heia several months ago, I spoke with Kanekoa about the stream remediation work that is an obligation of HCDA, but is passed on to Kako'iwi as a land lessee. And he had expressed difficulty in getting some of the machinery necessary to clear the stream into the property. So what he was proposing was an access way from the residential side, subdivision part of the property, and constructing a gravel access road to the stream. And I think we look at this as a public facilities, a kind of a district-wide improvement for the district, also because it will facilitate Kako'iwi taking care of the stream and keeping it clear for us. So the cost of that is approximately $400,000, and that's how much we're going to ask for. And Kaneko and I will work with the area legislators to get support for this. As we get to the supplemental budget, you know, we've asked for other requests in the supplemental budget, as I mentioned. But as those have not been really approved as yet, I'll defer that to a later meeting. Chair, that's all I have.
This is for informational, but any questions or comments from the members?
I do.
Member
It's
Sakota?
Kevin Sakota. Craig, you know, can you just, on Kewalo Basin, can you just review for me again the sort of the separation of the lease by Howard Hughes versus, I guess, the infrastructure of the entire basin?
Yeah, so we entered into a long-term lease with Howard Hughes and for the harbor. Within the lease, just generally speaking, within the lease, they were obligated to repair and maintain the floating dock areas, which they did. We, as the lessor, obligated ourselves to repair sort of that wharf area near, the old Fisherman's Wharf. We called it the bulkhead, earlier, but it's not really the bulkhead. The bulkhead part is actually gonna be the subject of, I think, a CIP request that OHA is gonna submit to the legislature this year. That's the retaining wall behind the sort of the apron or the pier. But we obligated ourselves, HCDA obligated itself to repair them. And we have not done that. Now, when you look at the deal that was struck and entered into now versus in 2017, we could look in hindsight and say, well, we should or shouldn't have done something like that. But I think at the time it was probably deemed to be one, we were finding in Howard Hughes a reliable operator for the harbor. Because we don't have the expertise to manage boat slips and boat harbors. It also passed on the expense and obligation to Howard Hughes. And they pay us a lease rent. So I think as time goes on, the cost of our obligation keeps going up. And so I think we need to get these repairs done, as soon as possible.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Member Sakota.
Greg, I have a question. This is Joanne.
Yeah, Member Leong. Welcome back, Member Leong.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
I'm a glutton for punishment. I wanted to ask the question about putting the gravel road in. And it's great, and I think that they have gravel roads all over. But I want you folks to think about, you and COA to think about making that a hardened road or paved road, and because of the dust that comes up and the neighbors complaining later on. So just a thought that you guys might consider, since you're going to make the request, and the legislature thinks very highly of them, that might get through.
Okay, it's noted.
Okay.
Noted. Thank you for your comments, Member Leong.
Any other comments or questions for ED Nakamoto? Right. Any public testimony? Okay, last item on the agenda is the report from the Executive Director, HCDA monthly financial highlights for November 2022.
Thank you, Chair. The highlights are, and the summary is included in tab 5. But I did want to note in item Roman 2.3, significant sort of activity and contracts entered into. This is pursuant to the action that was taken by the board to allow change the approval threshold. So in November, we entered into a consulting arrangement that we procured a consulting arrangement with former executive director Deepak Nupani to do management consulting in the total amount of 24,000 for the period from December 1st, 2022 to November 30th, 2023. Deepak will be, working on certain projects at my direction. And primarily, he'll be kind of working and helping out in the planning and development and capital improvement side. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any questions for Executive Director Nakamoto?
Member Higa here, just one question. What is the likelihood that this contract for Deepak is extended beyond the 1-year term?
Member Higa, honestly, I haven't really given it much thought. I'm thankful to get Deepak on for a year with his expertise and his experience, and we'll see what we can do. If we're gonna try to get Deepak on for another year, we're gonna have to procure it properly. So we'll have to do that. But we'll see. And it also depends on his own personal situation.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. I just want to note, I understand it's normal in executive transition situations to have some overlapping, but want to ensure that as these contracts are reviewed in the future, there's the opportunity for competitive bidding, because otherwise there's the potential appearance of impropriety with former directors staying on. Obviously, this is not like the most egregious case of consulting. I mean, this contract is much less than the millions of dollars that some other management consultants get in the state. So just want to ensure that moving forward, this is handled with propriety.
Yeah, it's noted, and I think that's why I mentioned that, if we're gonna extend it or do anything, it has to be done through procurement. And it will be done, thoughtfully and appropriately.
Thank you. What was the question?
Okay.
Oh,
Can I ask
There
a
was-
question, Craig? When did Deepak leave the state? I mean, has the adequate waiting period passed?
Yeah, for this type of engagement, we had checked with ethics, and Deepak had also checked with ethics. So, because he's just consulting on his own with us, yeah, we've checked with ethics. Member
Okay.
Tsuji,
Okay, thanks.
thank you.
good question.
Any other questions or comments? Is there any public testimony? Okay, well, thank you for those who have joined us in Zoom, in person, or via YouTube. This concludes our business for today. And the meeting is adjourned, and the time is now 10:57. Let's start the year in